Okay, we're back in Unity, and today we're going to look at loading scripts from the user's persistent data folder. So what I've done is I've now wired up the load script button. This opens up a little panel, and what it also does is lists all of the script files in the user's persistent data directory, which on Windows is in app data local low. And then finally, when you click one of these, it loads the content of that file into the script editor. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to walk you through the code and do some discussion on how to improve it. So to start off with, we have this load script panel prefab. This is using pretty much exactly the same UI that we created for the inventory. The structure is the same. The idea behind that is that when I come around to customizing this, making it all look good, it will all have very similar structure that's already pulled out into prefabs. We have a file row which I've overridden here to just have the header, and then I've got in the scroll view these file row prefabs are going to get placed. So if we open up one of those, you can see it's an icon and a file name. Okay, so what we're going to do is then start looking at the load script panel UI controller. This again, very similar to the inventory panel. We have the rect transform for the content, which is where we're going to place our rows, and we have a prefab for the row. So let's jump into there. So as you can see, we've got the prefabs, the inspector links here. We've then got two actions. One is an action string for success callback, and one is an action void, I guess, for a cancel callback. We've then got a string script save path, which is where we're going to look for our script files. On start, what we're doing is we're setting up the script save path to be the application persistent data path /scripts. In this directory, this is the persistent data path for the LUA strategy game project. We've then got this directory scripts, and in that are the 3 script files that we want to load. And what I've done is I've just added some comments in them for now, just to differentiate them. And eventually what we'll be doing is we'll be creating these when you save a script and writing these files out. So yeah, right in start, so we're setting the value of this private string script save path, and this is done here because application persistent data path has to be accessed inside a start method, which I didn't know. So for example, if we copy this out and just dump it in there, what will happen when we run the project is we'll get an exception up here. Come on. What will happen is we don't even get an exception, it just hard crashes the editor. Nice. Okay, well I'm going to go and have a look at why that might be the case. Okay, so weirdly enough, restarting the editor and rerunning the program doesn't crash it, but you can see this exception here. So get persistent data path is not allowed to be called from a monobehavior constructor or instance field initializer. It has to be an await or start. Not really sure why that is, but if anyone knows, I'd be interested to hear what it is in the comments. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is switch back to this and not do this. Interestingly, it doesn't seem to actually break anything, it just gives you the warning. I guess because we're also setting it here as well, which will override whatever goes wrong up here. Right, anyway, so we're getting the script save path, which is where we're going to load our files from. We are adding an on cancel click handler to the cancel button, and then we're immediately setting the game object active as false to hide it in the hierarchy. So I guess we've touched on this. So if we go to on cancel click handler, what this basically does is invokes the on cancel action if it exists. This is you might not have seen this C# feature before, but if you do question mark, it will null check on this, do nothing if it's null, and then do that if it's not null. This is a nice little shorthand for doing like if thingy equals null. This is basically shorthand for this. And then after attempting to invoke this, we are then going to just set the game object active false, which will hide the UI again. So that initializes the object as, in general, that gives us our path to get the scripts from. It also gives us our exit button, and then we're going to move on to this show file load panel, and this is called from the script panel. This is linked to the load script button on load button clicked, and we're basically taking this load script panel UI reference, which was passed in the inspector, and we're calling show load panel. And what we're doing is we're passing in two methods, two actions really, which is on success and on cancel. So one thing I sometimes like to do is, particularly with methods that take actions, I actually like to explicitly pass in the name of the parameter in here. I mean, you saw that Rider automatically created that for the on cancel. I sometimes, particularly if there's a lot of these things going in, like to name them. The other time I like to do this is with booleans. If you have like a do something true method, what does that true mean? Or if you've got like a method signature that is like my method true true false true false true true false, like that means absolutely nothing when you're reading it in code. So being able to pass in like on success true, on cancel false, naming these things in the method makes it much more readable. In the instance where you have like a method that just takes a load of balls, I would probably also look at using an enumerator or some other data structure to show that, because it's really not readable if you're just passing in balls. Okay, so what we're doing on cancel, we're not doing anything. We currently don't need to do any cleanup when we're doing that. And on success, we're taking the load script from path method and attaching that to that action. This is the signature of this is void string, and the action we had was action strings. And what we're doing in this method really simply is using system.io file to read all text from the path we pass in into the code, and then we're setting the code editor text to what we've just read out of that file. There is no error checking in this. This is really bad. We should probably wrap this with try catches, deal with any exceptions, that sort of thing. But for the sake of just getting it working to demonstrate, I'm going to assume it always works perfectly every single time and never goes wrong. So what we're going to do is look at the show file load panel method now in the load script panel UI controller. And this is what we were calling from the script edit UI panel. And we're passing in those two methods, which is on success and on cancel. So the first thing we're going to do is clear all the rows in the UI, and this essentially just for eaches through all of the children of the content rect transform and calls destroy on them. I've left a to-do here for object pooling. We did that in the inventory. I'm not sure if this is strictly necessary in this case, because this menu is eventually going to be completely created from new every time. It's not going to update or change its contents at runtime, whereas the inventory panel, as you add and remove items, is going to constantly be needing to regenerate that list, so the object pooling makes a little more sense in that case. I've left it as a to-do comment in there. I'll go back and review these later on. As this is the second time we've used this same template for a UI panel with a list of stuff in it, it might be worth abstracting out all of that panel with a list of stuff in it code into a base class and a base prefab, and then inheriting from that. That way we'll always have the object pooling happening, and if we want to make any tweaks to all of the different panels with a list of stuff in them, objects in the UI, we can then do that in one place, making it much easier to sort of test and optimize that. So that might be a good approach to take in the future. Moving on, we've now emptied out the UI, so there is nothing in the list, and we're going to get a list of all of the file paths for the script files. And the way we're doing that is just directory get files. This is system.io.directory, passing in that script save path. We're calling toList on this, which in this case is not strictly necessary. It gives us a list string rather than a string array, because we're just going straight through and like for eaching on this, we could do this in an array. If we wanted to sort it or filter it in some way beforehand, that would be a reason for keeping it as a list string. For now, we're just going to go and create the rows, and that's what we're doing. We're for eaching through all of the files. For each file path in the files, we are creating the file row. And create file row basically does two things. It instantiates the item prefab and attaches it to the context rex transform. So instantiate has a couple of overloads. What this does is it creates a new game object from this prefab and it makes it a child of this transform. And then well positioned stays is false. I almost always do this because what happens otherwise, particularly if you're adding like rows to a UI, is it will keep the position on the prefab, which means that all of the like the anchor position of the prefab gets copied onto this new object. So well positioned stays false in this case just overrides it and uses all the sort of the positions and stuff from the layout group rather than trying to create the item somewhere based on the offset position of the prefab. And then we're getting a reference to the row UI controller and we are initializing it. And when we're initializing it, we're passing in the path to the file, and we're also passing in the on the row click handler. So this file row UI controller has an on click has a button, which then means when you click the file UI row, we are going to have on file row click handler, which fires off the success callback again with the null coalescer there, and then hides the panel. We've now gone through and populated the UI with a list of file rows for each file that's in that directory. And as you saw earlier, there's the 3 files in that directory, so we have 3 rows in the UI. Then what we're doing is we're storing references to the onSuccess and onCancel, and we're using equals here to overwrite these. A lot of the time you'll probably use plus equals so that you can append additional methods to be invoked on an action. In this case, we only want onSuccess to be the current onSuccess, so we're using equals to basically just completely overwrite this, and the same with onCancel. And then finally, we're going to set the game object as true. And so we load script, we passed in those 2 actions for onSuccess and onCancel. When we click this, it fires off the onCancel method, so we go back and it basically closes the panel. If we go back in, and now we have the row objects with buttons on them. If we click one of those buttons, it fires the onSuccess callback, which is what is loading in the content out of that file. So yeah, that's basically how that works. You could use this for, or a similar approach for loading save files, loading if you had like a directory full of say JSON files that represented spaceships or characters or loot or something, you could use that. There's plenty of other different things to do. And what we're going to do next is move on to saving scripts. So once we've gone and wrote our amazing asteroid finding mining script in here, hit save script, we'll have another similar UI but with a input field on it so that you can give it a new file name or select an existing file name. So thanks for watching. This is I think part 4 in the series. I'd love to know what you guys think of the series so far, what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see less of. Again, it's been quite a long time since I've been doing any tutorials, so I'm trying to sort of get back into the swing of things, and I think this is working out as quite a nice project for me in that it's kind of a silly toy. There's no sort of grand plan. I'm just adding bits to it as I want, which means that if there's a bit that you want to see added to it, let me know. I would love for some ideas for future directions to take this. Brilliant. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.